Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and I think this is probably one of the most requested reviews that we've received after the Samsung QN90A is this one. This is the Hisense U6G TV. It is priced a little over 60,000 rupees, boasts of being a full array backlit QLED TV, and according to Hisense it has a little over 72 dimming zones and a claimed peak brightness of about 700 nits. So is this TV too good to be true, or is it a great QLED TV for the price? Now, just to put things into perspective, almost a year ago we reviewed Xiaomi's 55-inch QLED TV that does not have any dimming zones, and today that TV is available for approximately 60,000 rupees. So is it wise for you to spend the extra 4,000 rupees on this Hisense TV? The short answer is yes, but to know exactly why, stay tuned and watch this review. And if you like our TV reviews, please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified when we upload a new video. Now, of course, since this is a full array backlit TV and it claims a slightly higher peak brightness than what we've seen other budget TVs. Now remember, budget TVs in this price range have a peak brightness between 400 and some of them go up to 500 nits of peak brightness. So we put this TV through our suite of tests, and let's begin with some really interesting results. Now, of course, we will start with peak brightness. In the standard dynamic range, we've seen that this TV can go slightly above 300 nits, which is very good. So if you're going to watch content from your set-top box or even some content on OTT platforms, which is not in HDR, it's in SDR or full HD, you are going to get a pretty nice experience even in a relatively lit room. Now, coming to the peak brightness claims, here is where things look a little strange to us, because in the smaller windows, remember, when a TV boasts of peak brightness, it usually hits that absolute peak to show you specular highlights. So let's say you have a tube light in a room which is really bright. You need to be able to not only see the tube light but all the details around it which are really bright. This is where the TV hits its peak brightness at smaller windows. But what we found is that at a relatively larger window is where the Hisense TV hits its peaker brightness at about the 25% mark, which is also actually very nice. Now, it has the claimed peak brightness of 700 nits. We found it to hit about 600 nits in our test, which is not bad at all, again considering what other TVs offer. To put things into perspectives, Samsung's 50-inch frame TV, we found that it reached a peak brightness of only 400 nits of peak brightness. So this TV can get pretty bright, especially considering its price range and what it's offering. Again, that's a pretty nice thing. Now, we bumped up the backlighting of the TV to 100% to get this peak brightness, but remember, if you leave it on its factory settings, you do get much accurate colors for some type of content that you watch, and this is where our grayscale 2 point tells us that even at 100%, we got an average delta error of 3 or below, which again is very good. Remember, for color accuracy, the human eye can perceive errors above 3, and in most cases it's only if you know exactly what to look for. So that's also good. It covers a fairly accurate amount of the Rec 709 color gamut as well, and in our color checker analysis for the movie preset was the one which gave us the lowest delta error of 4.9. Now, this is slightly higher, and we have seen this in QLED TVs in the past, and my analysis for this is it's trying to create slightly more punchy and more vibrant colors because of the QLED backlighting, and that's why the delta error is slightly higher. But we have seen QLED TVs with a lower delta error than 4.9 in this case, and it's not really that bad when it translates to real world usage, which is what we will come to next. So overall, in all the analysis that we've done using our Calman, we found this TV's performance to be very good overall. Now, when we move to real world content, this is where things get really interesting, because depending on the type of content you're watching, be it Dolby Vision, HDR10, HDR10 Plus or standard dynamic range content, you have a different slew of settings at your disposal. So getting a little bit of the irritating con of this TV out of there is that when you look at color temperature, you want it to be something in the vicinity of a warm or cool or neutral, but out here you have it as like a low, medium and high setting, which for me got a little bit confusing. So I wish it was like we've seen it with traditional TVs on the cool, warm and neutral side. Having said that, you do get a different set of presets to play with based on the kind of content you are watching. So be it in HDR10, HDR10 Plus, Dolby Vision and SDR content. So let's quickly start with SDR content that you will consume on your set-top box or OTT platforms. Like for example, on Netflix, what we use, we have, let's say, a movie like Mission Impossible and Spider-Man Homecoming. Now we do notice that the standard and the cinema preset do get the job done very well. This is something we've seen in the past, and leaving it on dynamic kind of makes colors slightly over accentuated. When it comes to the movie preset, we've seen, or cinema in this case as it's called, that the backlighting is reduced. Now you can bump up the backlighting considerably, and it really helps when you are consuming content in a well-lit room. But if you are in a darker room, you can bump the backlighting down, and this helps to eliminate any of the edges that you might see in dark scene content, especially considering the TV does have local dimming zones. So it just adds that extra layer of punch when you're watching content in a dimly lit room. When we move over to Dolby Vision content, again, you have the standard slew of Dolby Vision Bright, Dolby Vision Dark, and Dolby Vision Custom. As I've always said, leave it on Dolby Vision Bright and you get the best overall output. And out here, some of the customization options on the settings are not available to you. So we see a show like, let's say, Our Planet on Netflix, which is in Dolby Vision. And as you can see, the sequence we always use is of the bird flying into the sun. It is a relatively nice detailed sequence. Even when you have all the fishes in water, or where the earth is rotating, or when you have this transition of the day-night cycle, all of it looks really, really immersive on this TV, especially when you consider the price point. Remember, we are looking at this TV from a price point perspective because we have, let's say, a Neo QLED TV from Samsung like the QN90A, which has much higher peak brightness, much better colors to showcase, but that TV costs almost 1 lakh rupees more than this TV. So considering the price point, we found that even the HDR performance of this TV was really good. And when it comes to HDR10 plus content, you have another bunch of presets like HDR10 plus in dynamic, standard, and cinema. Now here I'm just going to say it, leave it on HDR10 plus cinema and move on, because all the content you have on Amazon Prime Video, be it like the Grand Tour or even Jack Ryan, which we used to test on this TV, looks really, really good in cinema. It brings out some really nice warm tones. Now in a show like Grand Tour, you might want to leave it on standard because it kind of gives you some elevation in the colors with a slightly cool bias, and if you're okay with that, you will enjoy the show in that preset as well. When it comes to normal HDR10 content, again, you have a bunch of presets to choose from dynamic, standard, sports, cinema, etc. And if you, let's say, play YouTube videos in HDR, this is where you can get to play around with these settings. And once again, out here, the cinema preset is one that does a relatively decent job. So overall, the performance of this TV, considering its price and what is on offer with the content is available, is pretty good, much better than some of the other QLED TVs we've seen in this price range, simply because not only can it get slightly brighter, but it also has dimming zones, which really helps with low light performance, especially if you're going to consume content in a dark room. The only problem I have with the presets and some of the settings of this TV is when it comes to gaming. Now, in the regular standard SDR presets, you do have a game mode to choose from, but in HDR, which is, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X that is available right now, are consoles that can game in HDR, and there is no game mode in the HDR settings. So when you log into your console, I would highly recommend going into the HDR custom preset and switching off everything like, anything to do with noise reduction, anything to do with color enhancements. Just go into the advanced setting and switch everything off if it's not off already. Another point of problem we had, especially when you calibrate the TV using the PS5 settings, remember when you log into the console for the first time, it asks you to adjust the brightness. So when you adjust the brightness and open a game like Dirt 5, you really notice that the console and the TV aren't communicating right. In fact, the TV is telling the console that it can handle a much higher peak brightness than it actually can. So here's a little tip for those of you that want to correctly calibrate your PS5 to this TV. When you are pressing up to make the content brighter, where the sun kind of blends into the white background, you will notice after about 5 or 6 or 7 clicks up that the sun stops blending into the background for a few clicks, and then it starts blending again. Where it stops blending into the sun is exactly where you need to stop pressing up to tell the console what the peak brightness of the TV is, and that is the sweet spot of the settings. The same goes for the 10% window of the brightness. As far as the blacks that you adjust on the console, that works normally, it's fine. So once we adjusted the HDR correctly, even a game like Dirt 5, which is an HGIG game, looked really good on this TV. Now, yes, there are a few specular highlights that do look slightly burnt out, but then again, you can go back into the calibration settings and reduce the peak brightness, and you will get a much better experience of this TV overall. So the fact that there is no game mode and you really need to spend some time calibrating the TV for gaming is a big hurdle, especially when we've seen other TVs kind of handle this a lot better. But after you've set this TV right, you can play games like, let's say, Ghost of Tsushima, which has this really nice watercolor palette to it, or even Spider-Man Miles Morales, which has this really soft yet beautiful HDR, especially when you're swinging towards the sun. Any game you will play on this TV looks really good. Yes, you may feel the input lag be slightly higher if you're someone that's into competitive gaming, and that's probably because there isn't exactly an HDR game mode on this TV. But for most of you that want to play single player games, or aren't really into super competitive gaming online, should have a pretty good experience because the panel works really well on this TV for gaming. When it comes to audio, you have 24 watts of sound output, and considering how good the panel performance is, audio could be a place where the TV feels slightly compromised on, because you don't get that thumpy bass, but at least the vocals are clear. Now, the standard preset for audio is what we found worked really well overall. But yeah, you can play around with the presets to see what you like. If you're going to put this TV in a bedroom, you should be fine with it. But I would highly recommend that you, invest in an external audio device with this TV, because the panel performance is actually pretty nice. When it comes to the remote control, it's actually the same one we got with the Hisense A71F that we reviewed some time ago, and it has the same cons it did then. So for example, you do have the D-pad out here, which lets you navigate, but the downside is that the home button at the bottom and the Google Assistant button at top is really close to the up-down button. Even though there is a bit of a knob out here to let you know where the button is, there were many times when I ended up pressing the Assistant instead of up and home instead of down. Same qualm we had back then, but it looks like this remote works for Hisense and they've kept it the same. We have a bunch of OTT hotkeys and the rest of it is pretty easy to navigate. It doesn't feel the best, feels a little cheap, but that's okay considering if this is one of the compromises to get you a better panel, it works. Speaking of the build and design, you have all the connectivity options neatly laid out, which we are showing you on your screens right now. But a really nice thing about this TV, and that deserves special mention, is the feet. Now it has 2 feet and they're pretty wide. So if you're someone that has a slightly smaller entertainment center, you may want to check if the feet will fit on that table. But a good advantage is that you have 2 hooks on the metal feet of this TV where you can route your cable, which really helps with cable management if you want to, have a cleaner looking setup. So that's really nice. So here's a way of concluding this TV's review. Its price for the 55-inch variant at about 64,000 rupees as of recording this review. The Xiaomi Mi QLED TV 55-inch that we reviewed last year is priced at about 60,000 rupees, but that does not come with any local dimming zones. Is this the best full array local dimming TV we've tested so far? Well, no, because it does have compromises in some places, but you as a viewer may not be able to notice those unless you know exactly where to look for. There are a lot of QLED TVs in the 55-inch space available from as low as 50 to 55,000 rupees, going all the way up to 65,000 rupees. And this one really finds a sweet spot when it comes to its price to performance. It has a pretty good panel for consuming content in HDR and SDR, especially HDR, considering it has a slightly higher peak brightness than other TVs that we've tested. And the local dimming zones in the TV also help you get a better experience when consuming content in a darker environment. The audio output from this TV is okay. It's running on the standard Android TV UI, and we really didn't notice any hiccups out there, so it's pretty straightforward. Where it does lack is some of the settings we found tinkering around with can be a little tedious because their naming conventions might feel a little different, and the audio output from the TV we were left wanting a little more, and of course they have the same old remote control. But yes, if you are looking for a TV at the 60,000 rupee price point, then the Hisense U6G can definitely be one to consider, especially considering it's offering a few features above the competition. So there you have it, guys. That was our review of this TV. As always, you can let us know what you thought of it in the comment section below, and for more from the world of technology, you can subscribe to the channel. We will catch you in another video. It's goodbye for now.